I'm Bobby, and I'm going to show you my vintage Star Wars action figure collection. Sadly, none of my spaceships or playsets remain from the 1970s or 80s, and many of them I would really still like to have, but unfortunately, time itself has taken its toll on that. Fortunately, I do have some of the classic figures, and I'm going to show them to you. I must say they are from the original Star Wars movie, eventually retitled Episode 4: A New Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi. I did not, and wasn't aware of the Power of the Force collection from the 1980s, which was a brief line in the mid-80s after the movies had sort of died out and collectors were still vying for collectibles to eventually sell back to us at a much more expensive rate. These are from the original movie lines, and my daughter and I are going to show you them and some of the gripes I had and some of the praise I had for particular figures. So please enjoy, and I'll be back after we show you these. Thanks. Hello, I'm Bobby, and I'm here to show you my classic Star Wars vintage collection of figures. Sadly, not a lot exists from that time period that I still have, except for this Darth Vader carrying case from roughly around 1980, 1981, and the figures that are inside. Basically, the spaceships and playsets are God only knows where, and this is all that remains. I never liked this carrying case. I will say that the figures are not held in very well at all, and my daughter Ari is going to help me right now by showing you exactly what happens when you open the case. The snaps, there's one on top and two on the sides, and they're really stiff and they're difficult to open. And you'll see the figures basically just fall. Lift that back part up so you can see how they're held in. The white labels are something I put on for different figures I would store in the case from different lines. The actual labels were black with white lettering for each figure. So we're going to do a jump cut and we're going to show you the actual figures. Okay, now we're going to show you some of the figures in more detail. The droids didn't weather very well. They started out gold and are now silver.
Can I describe this one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I do not like this articulation. This is C-3PO in case you can't tell. I like how it's made aside from the silvering. It's a little shiny so because of the lighting. Watch this.
That's over time, these figures, especially the droids, became very loose.
I do not like that one bit.
It didn't start out that way. It started out very rigid. But over time, for some reason, the droids in particular, the waist became very loose, the legs and arms just became very loose.
You can't even raise its arm unless you put it all the way to the top.
Let's
do the other one.
It's not practical at all.
This one's better.
This is the Death Star droid, and I think that actually is his original color. But the articulation is roughly the same.
It gets stuck in one place.
Yeah.
Is that a paint bleed? Hang on. It's not. No, I don't know. It could be just part of the figure.
Then we have my original Obi-Wan Kenobi still with cape.
Oh, that one. The capes I hate.
And this is kind of rare. Still to have his cape. Unfortunately, I do not still have his lightsaber. He had the hand, though, with the built-in lightsaber effect. So you always have to do is slide it out, and you have the instant lightsaber, which was a neat function, and it kind of saved on losing accessories, unless of course you were like me and most kids who took the lightsabers out and could never find them again.
Looks like he's a survivor from the Titanic that had like hypothermia or something.
He's the paint applications aren't great, but for the time, this was an original 1970s figure. It was better than the alternative, which would have been Star Wars was pitched to the company Mego that made Star Trek figures, and they were 8-inch figures as opposed to 3/4 inch. I mean, they had actual clothing, but they looked really bad.
It's not focusing.
These were at least in scale, more so than some of the others. My Princess Leia's.
I was hoping you'd save those for last, but it's okay.
Well, basically done. Just Princess Leia's.
Can I describe them?
Go ahead. I have the original.
Yay! Wait, which one is that? That's
the original.
Okay. Paint job. I don't know if that's how it came. You can ask him.
This is from time. I mean, it looked good for its time, but certainly, she's been through a lot. And
she doesn't have her cape.
She doesn't have her cape, and she has the basic articulation, head turns, arms move, legs move, but that's it. There's no real posability, and I don't care about that. I just think they were good for the time, and they were nice to have to play with that when you were trying to use your imagination. Some of the other Princess Leia's, as time went on, got a little better. This one is the best in Princess Leia, still with cape.
I like her hair.
Yeah, the hair is good on that one. And
maybe you should go as Princess. Oh, that's the thing that Nana did to me. The hair.
The face sculpt on this one is actually pretty decent as well, as opposed to some of the other ones. So, I mean, they did a good job, Kenner, on this one. I was impressed.
The cape has a pretty pattern, too.
It does. It's one of those capes that you don't like in particular. But
I know, I like the design on the bottom, but, the collar, the flap
the
thing.
texture.
Yeah, I hate the texture. It feels like you're touching the one semi-soft side of sandpaper.
It's a very true analogy. And we have the Emperor. The Emperor.
We're not done with the Leias.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
We have. Don't you have two of these?
I have the new one.
Okay.
This is the Endor Princess Leia, who also was the bounty hunter disguised as Princess Leia back in the 1980s, because we didn't really get separate Leias back then for Return of the Jedi. We just had this one, to my knowledge. And she originally had a helmet, and it was like a disguise, a bounty hunter disguise, but this one, sadly, this is all that remains from her.
Okay, and then we have this one.
This is Hoth, I think. Let me see.
I didn't know.
Yeah, that's
Leia.
That's Princess Leia in her Hoth costume, and
okay, there we go.
This is basically Princess Leia from the beginning of The Empire Strikes Back, and the outfit itself is pretty accurate to what she wore in the movie. The articulation is standard, and the detailing isn't bad. It's not great, but it's
sorry, there's a little stain of blue on it.
Yeah, it's not great, but it's decent, and it added for the fun value to just have diversity in figures. So Han Solo here had some pretty horrible paint bleed, and he also came like that. but he is the Bespin Han. My Hoth Han Solo has a terrible paint bleed. My daughter's going to show you that now. If you could see, the paint is just very, very bad. And I remember getting it out of the package like that and wondering what happened at Kenner. That's just one of the minor, or in this case major flaws that this particular figure had. The articulation is basic for the time. The head can turn, but I'm not going to chance it. The arms will rotate, and the figure can sit. However, when he does, his legs go straight apart, which really was difficult when putting him into a spaceship or into a tauntaun, because as you'll remember, the tauntauns back in the 1980s had the little hatch on top where you'd stick the feet into. You can squeeze the feet together, but they don't stay together. So, a little gripe there on Han. Some of the other figures that are here, the Sand Person still has his cape, which is really unique in my opinion, because it's like a vinylish material, and they had very thin holes in the back of the cape where you could put the arms.
Sorry, I have to move them.
So you can put the arms through and take the cape off or leave it on. I wish it would have been designed differently, because the cape's easily tore, and my Princess Leia is missing her cape, and so are a few of the other figures that have capes.
I don't like the capes. They're annoying.
I always liked them because that's all I knew up to a point. So, put that one down and grab,
Can I do the one I wanted to do?
Yes, this is probably the best figure ever made, in my opinion. And my daughter loves it as well.
I like the cape. This is a cool cape, because it's cloth, not that plasticky stuff.
It's the Emperor's Royal Guard, and when I first saw this figure, Jedi wasn't out yet in theaters, and I thought this is one of the coolest figures, and the character did absolutely nothing in the movie except stand there. But the cloth cape was really an improvement over the vinyl, and it added for a lot of detail. It's one of the best figures ever. Okay, lastly, we have the Emperor himself. This is a figure that was a mail-order offer through Kenner, and then was available later on as a figure you could buy in stores. He could have been done better. I like the face and head sculpt and the arms.
I don't like the feet, how they just separate like that.
The feet, that's my major gripe, because you had the Emperor's Royal Guard, who was in the cloth cape and outfit. The Emperor, who also wore the cape, they just sculpted it as two separate pieces with the legs. So when you move the legs, you'll see that the cape just...
10 p.m.
It's 10 o'clock. The legs just shift apart, and the cape shifts, and it's no longer one piece. If they would have done a cloth sculpt over the legs, it would have looked a lot better, like the Emperor's Royal Guard did. I don't know why Kenner didn't do that. Maybe they weren't on the same page, different factories, who knows. But this is what we got back in the 1980s for the Emperor. Not a bad figure, but not a great figure. And that was the problem with Kenner. It was always very much touch and go with what you got. and what you'd expect to get. I hope you enjoyed looking at that piece of nostalgia from the 1970s and 1980s. My original Star Wars collection, as it remains to this day. Some of the spaceships and playsets I wish I still had are some of my first, ironically enough. The very first playset I recall having was Land of the Jawas, and it was really cool because you had this sandy surface, and you had this cardboard backdrop that could be removed, and when you removed it, you just had the sandy surface with the pegs for the feet, so you could really get a lot more play out of it. It had that feature about it. It also came with the droid's escape pod that was made to fit C-3PO and R2-D2. However, I always crammed as many figures in as I could and took it with me basically wherever I went, so that I'd have my figures along to play with. That was a cool thing about the escape pod and the planet and the Land of the Jawas playset. I had the Millennium Falcon. In fact, I had 3 Millennium Falcons. The first one I gutted and converted into a Starship Enterprise when Star Trek The Motion Picture was released and figures were released in 3 1/4 inch scale. And by gutted it, I meant there were holes in it for separate rooms. Don't ask how I did it or how I thought it out, but I had an engineering section, and it was no longer the Millennium Falcon, so I saved up and I had purchased a second one. My first one was a Christmas gift from my parents. My second one I purchased on my own because I had clearly defaced the original. And the third one I actually purchased in the 1990s as part of the Power of the Force 2 range when they were reissuing all of the classic memorabilia in more detail. I also wish I still had Slave 1, the Dagobah playset, which was awesome in my opinion. The Rebel Transport, otherwise known as the Hoagie, as it looked like, or a sub, all depending on what part of the country you live in. It was a ship that I loved because you could fit a lot of figures in it. And in my opinion, it had a lot of playability. A lot of other people didn't like it because it didn't get a lot of screen time, and therefore it wasn't as important to them as an X-Wing fighter or a TIE fighter, which I also had. But I preferred some of the less popular ships like the Transport. I had a Snowspeeder, loved that. And of course, I had several Land Speeders because the thing kept breaking. That was like my favorite vehicle as a child, was the Land Speeder. And I recently was able to find a Power of the Force 2 1990s Land Speeder on Amazon.com for $10. So that kind of made me happy. With its box, so it was all intact. That was pretty amazing. But I'm going to show you now a slideshow that I've compiled via Google Pictures, and there's a cat behind me. And things I'm going to have in the slideshow are all things I've owned, and I hope you enjoy this, and thank you for watching.
that's in my life. Past before my life, the days and nights. Just too much to ask for some time. Cause all I want to do is make you mine. You know we all need love and romance. We all need something in our lives that will last. What more can I say before it's time to make the change from obsession to devotion? What more can I say before it's time to surrender? My love will be your tender. What more can I say? I realize we are from different worlds, but something tells me that you're the right girl. You know you're very independent, don't need much out here. Such a spaceship reality, and let me hold you near. You know we all need love and romance. We all need something in our lives that will last. What more can I say before it's time to make the change from obsession to devotion? What more can I say before it's time to surrender? My love will be your tender. What more can I say? You know we all need love and romance. We all need something in our lives that will last. What more can I say before it's time to make the change from obsession to devotion? What more can I say before it's time to surrender? My love will be your tender. What more can I say? What more can I say? What more can I say? What more can I say?